Avatar has an excellent world that is makes logical sense to its world and has like set of rules, and I love the extra background history and stories behind it. And one of the main things that makes this world so enriching is through backstories. Now, backstories can be applied to a person, a place, or a thing, in which Avatar does a great job doing those things. But today we're going to talk about three main episodes that covers backstories and how it influences our characters at the time of that episode, and how much, they progress and move on to the end of the season. The first episode I want to talk about that is so significant to the series is The Storm. In this episode, Aang finally reveals why he left the Air Nomads, and once Aang found out he was the Avatar, everything started to begin to change for him. His friends began to stop playing with him due to the fact that he's the Avatar, even though he's still the same old kid, and he was being pressured by the other monks to keep training and he shouldn't be messing around, even though Monkey also advocated that he should be a kid and take his time with it, even though the world and the other monks demand him to be the Avatar immediately, in which Aang is very conflicted and confused. Out of fear of losing his friends and his home, Aang decides to run away, in which he ends up in the North Pole, frozen. This episode really highlights, what kind of person Aang is, that he's just a afraid kid that is afraid to lose everything he's familiar with, that he has the responsibilities of being the Avatar, and how some part of his childhood was stripped away from him, but because of his fear, it allowed the 100-Year War, in which he is very guilt-ridden about. I believe that most people, when watching Avatar, they tend to forget how much Aang really lost. Not only his home, but his own people and his friends and the people that he looked up to and the only family he really knew. I'm really glad that this episode took its time to explore Aang's, feelings about the whole situation, because after episode 3, we never really got to see what he really thinks about it. But I'm really glad this episode in The Storm allows, Aang to talk to Katara about what happened and what he felt at the time. And towards the end of the episode, he redeems himself and learns that and basically accepts the role of being the Avatar, and now that he is still around, he can still make a difference and live up to his people and save the world. Not only we got to explore Aang's backstory, but Zuko's too, in which Uncle Iroh tells the story to the crew of the ship. In Zuko's flashback, we get to see Zuko attending a meeting in which he openly spoke out about the plan of sacrificing troops. However, the Fire Lord took Zuko's outburst as disrespect and challenged Zuko in an Agni Kai. Zuko cries and begs to not fight his father. However, Ozai isn't that type of person to let this go lightly, in which he burns Zuko's face as punishment. Not only Ozai burns Zuko's face, he also forces Zuko to be banished, and in order for him to come home, he must find the Avatar, in which at that time, he believed that task was basically impossible. This episode really makes Zuko a sympathetic character, as in the beginning of the series, he was just the main villain and just wanted to get the Avatar. However, we don't really know why and how he's out here, on how he got that scar. And so this episode really explains basically everything for Zuko, as his motivation of why he wants to get the Avatar, but also what kind of person he was back then. And I love that transition with when he was younger to what he is now when chasing the Avatar, and it really shows how much care and passion Zuko has for his father and to return home and for things to be normal again, but it can't be. In retrospect, I like to believe this episode really parallels Aang and Zuko, and which really comes back later, but in this episode it really shows that how much shame and guilt these two characters experience due to their one action, which caused a lot of pain to themselves. Despite their trauma and guilt, Aang still finds hope, in which he saves Sokka and the fisherman, in which the fisherman thanks, the Avatar. And I'm really glad that Aang acknowledges that, despite him not being there to save his people and being missing for 100 years, he is here at the moment right now, and he's going to make the most of it. In which I'm really proud, and, of Aang just acknowledging that, and he's like slowly growing to be a bit more of a mature character. As for Zuko, I love how in the beginning he acts like he doesn't care about the crew at all and just wants to find the Avatar. However, towards the end of the episode, he saves his crewmate, and once he sees Aang, he's like, we don't need to chase him right now. We need to get the ship to safety. And everything with Zuko and Aang's arc in this episode really comes full circle, and I'm really happy this episode like exists, and it's such an important episode, at least for me too, and how it really jumpstarts the series like for real. The next episode I want to talk about is Zuko Alone, and this is one of the best and fan favorite episode, especially when it comes about backstory. In this episode, we follow Zuko in his childhood with his mom and sister and his relationship with his father. As in the first scene of the flashback, we see Zuko, throwing a rock to a baby turtle duck. And right before he does this, Zuko says, "Want to see how Azula feeds turtle ducks?" And just this one piece of dialogue in action, we understand that Zuko follows Azula's cruel habits, as his father really admires and like praises that type of action and personality. However, Azula's mom is, completely the opposite, as she's very kind, a bit more compassionate, and she like, scolds him like, "Zuko, why would you do that?" Zuko's mom was a caring and kind person who reassured Zuko's shortcomings and gave him comfort whenever he was in distress. If Ursa wasn't around for Zuko, he would have been trained to be as cruel and conniving as Azula. And without that compassion and love, I don't think Zuko would have been the same person as he would be now. Not only we got to see Zuko as this like really kind kid, we also get to see how cruel and sadistic Azula was even as a child. Through this flashback, we get to see how Azula manipulates and lies to Zuko. She showed even less empathy, or any empathy at all, when she lost her cousin Lu Ten, and she like berated Uncle Iroh for not like continuing fighting on, in which rightfully so, Zuko's mom told her this is like not a correct behavior, you shouldn't say these things. And it just really shows how much she admires her father way more than others, and not even her mother at all. And it's really sad and interesting to see how Azula treats people even as a child, even towards her own friends. Furthermore, we also got to see how Ozai favors Azula way more, as she's a prodigy and he has the time to basically teach her the things that he values, such as the drive for power and manipulation. And it just really shows how awful Ozai has on their children, as you can see like how much like Zuko vows his approval as to be his son. And towards the end of season 3, you get to see Azula just breaking down and just wants to be part of Ozai, with his plan and everything, and she basically just breaks down and mentally, and it's just really sad how much influence parents have over their children, and it's just really sad, and it's just terrible abuse. Towards the end of the flashback, we see Ozai talking to his father and saying that he should replace Iroh as Fire Lord. However, his dad didn't take that lightly, in which he orders Ozai to kill Zuko so he can experience the pain of losing his firstborn. In order to save Zuko's life, Zuko's mom, collaborates with Ozai and saying, "I can create this potion and, make you the Fire Lord so you can, have your dad died in his sleep. However, and if he lets Zuko stay alive, she must go away and be banished from the palace," in which Zuko's mom gives the ultimate sacrifice of leaving her kids but keeping Zuko alive. And so he tells Zuko at the very last second that to be himself and remember who he is. At the end of the episode, we see Zuko standing up to the soldiers once more. However, he has a hard time battling the last person, and which he uses firebending. Using firebending may save his life, but it definitely did not help the situation for himself any further, in which the townsfolk and even the boy he saved didn't want his help any further and basically tell him to leave, in which Zuko continues on his own. This is one of the best backstory episodes because we really get to see who Zuko was and how he was raised and the people that really influenced him in his life, especially from his mother. From our viewing and Uncle Iroh's view, we all know that Zuko has the potential to be good, and he's not always been the evil bad guy, as he has shown so much mercy and kindness throughout season 2. And this episode really highlights where he gets that from, and I'm really glad that he gets to reflect, his family and the family that he's with currently, and how the potential of like war and suffering can be caused by both sides. And it's really enthralling to see Zuko learning and maturing to become the person he is, he's going to be by the end of season 3. In this episode, Zuko didn't need to help the people from the village, saving the kid and standing up to the soldiers, but he ended up doing it anyways. Why? Because he's a compassionate person. Season 2 as a whole is, I regard, as the season where Zuko explores and learns that the Fire Nation and war does affect people and their families, especially when you think about, in the episode where the boy he saved, his brother, is off to war, and the potential of him getting captured reflects like how Uncle Iroh lost his son. And this is a really great moment, an episode for Zuko to learn that not everything he believes in is not always correct, and sometimes it's not all about him, but it's also about the bigger picture. And I just like to say Zuko Alone is a really great episode overall. The last episode I want to talk about is the Southern Raiders. The episode starts off with Azula and the Fire Nation attacking Aang and the gang, in which they escape successfully, and everybody celebrates Zuko's victory and like them helping them. But the only person who isn't cheering for Zuko is still Katara. Zuko asks Katara what's her problem, and she basically explains she was the first person to trust Zuko. However, she betrayed her in Ba Sing Se, in which the only way they can make it up to her is to reconquer Ba Sing Se and bring back her mother. Zuko then asks Sokka like what happened during that day, in which he recalls what he saw and tells Zuko what he saw on the flags of the people that invaded their village. Zuko waits all night for Katara to come out of her tent, in which he tells her that he knows who killed her mother. Once Katara finds about this information, she soon packs up with Zuko to find the man who killed her mother. As Zuko and Katara get ready to leave, Aang tells Katara that revenge is not the way and that she should forgive him, but Katara feels completely the opposite at this moment, as she just wants revenge for the one who killed her mother. And Zuko, in really weird way, but in his perspective, believes that this is justice. But however, even Sokka agrees with Aang that she needs to let this go and continue to move on, in which Katara tells Sokka that you don't love, our mom as much as I did, which is really hurtful to say, and I understand she said that out of anger. While on their journey to the Southern Raiders, Katara talks about her perspective of the events that happened. We see Katara as a little child, and she's rushing to her home saying there's a raid, in which she found a man like interacting with her mother, and her mom tells her to go find your father and she'll be okay. And right when they come back, it's already too late that she's gone. We then see Zuko and Katara, going and sneakily go inside the Southern Raiders ship, in which Katara bloodbends the leader and asking him, "Do you remember me?" In which Katara looks him in the eye and says that's not him. So it turns out that Zuko and Katara were finding the wrong person, in which the person that did raided their village was retired. And we cut to Yun Ra, the former leader of the Southern Raiders, and just living with his mother and going out for groceries. Zuko and Katara soon ambush Yun Ra on his trip to get more food, and Katara starts questioning him and asking, "Do you remember my face? And do you recognize, who I am?" Yun Ra takes a look at her and immediately knows that she was the little girl from the Southern Water Tribe. And then the scene transitions to the flashback to his perspective of the event. In his version of the flashback, we get to see why Yun Ra was there, in which he was there to get rid of and capture the last waterbender, in which Katara's mom lies and say that was her and take me as prisoner. However, Yun Ra says that we're not taking the prisoners, and so he kills Katara's mother. Katara reveals to Yun Ra that she was the last waterbender to be alive, and basically her mother sacrificed herself to save Katara's life, in which Katara begins to strike at him, in which she stops herself at the very last minute. As much as Katara wanted to, kill him and take revenge, she stops herself and she just couldn't do it. Katara spares Yun Ra's life, in which she returns back to the gang and talks to Aang what happened. Katara tells Aang that she still feels conflicted about these feelings and that fact that she didn't forgive him, and the only person that she was ready to forgive was Zuko, in which this episode really comes full circle, especially for Katara and her relationship with Zuko. This episode does a fantastic job, with the use of flashbacks, as we get to see the 3 different perspectives of the whole event. At first, we get to see Sokka's perspective, as his perspective was more of the wider scope of the battle, and then his feelings about him losing his mother. And then we get to see Katara's feelings about it, how she was a scared little girl and she went to go get her father, but by the time they come back it's too late. And towards the last flashback, we get to see Yun Ra's perspective, and it basically explained why he was there, what was he looking for, in which we also get another confirmation of Katara's mom being dead. I also want to highlight how the show does a really good job balancing these different perspectives on revenge, as Aang is the one who notions the idea of forgiveness and moving on, and even Sokka even agrees with Aang. However, Katara completely disagrees and basically saying that it's impossible to forgive him and that she needs this as a sense of closure. And we also get to see Zuko's perspective as well, as he believes this is justice, an eye for an eye. And I'm really glad the show took a mature route about this topic, as there is no definitive answer in how to feel about, losing someone to another person, as, there is no clear answer. Katara forgiving Yun Ra would have been really weird, but I'm really glad that she still feels conflicted and not able to forgive him, as it feels really realistic in a very mature way. The Southern Raiders is a really good episode. It's really mature with its tone and messages, and we don't have a direct, clear answer, especially for Katara. And yeah, overall this is a really great episode for her, and I'm really glad how this really concludes her arc with her mother and everything. And yeah, this is one of the best backstory episodes. The backstories from Avatar provide so much information and details of past events we never got to see, and I love how the stories provide so much layers and depth to characters such as Aang and Zuko and Katara, and provide so much to their characters. The structures to these backstory episodes is brilliant, as in the beginning of the episode they start off with the problem, in which the characters have to reflect on the problem they have faced back then, and I love how it parallels to their past problems into their for them to find resolution towards the end of it. And it's just really great writing, and it's very creative to explore a character's background while having the plot move along with them as well. And it's just crazy and like good writing, and I'm just really happy that everything comes full circle. Although these episodes don't necessarily move the plot along, these are episodes that provide progression of our characters internally. In a lot of ways, these are the most important episodes in the series, and without these backstories, I don't think we would have been as invested with the characters or learned what they have gone through. The most important episode, in my opinion, that really solidified the backstories of Avatar is definitely the storm. In the episode, we got to explore Aang's like frustrations and fears and the burden of becoming the Avatar and how he ended up at the North Pole. And we also get to explore Zuko on how he got the scar and how his father banished him, and basically why he's so motivated to capture Aang. And yeah, that's all I have to say about these backstory episodes. They're just really great. They're excellent. I love these type of episodes where we get to focus on character the most more than plot driven stories. And I'm just wondering, what are your guys' favorite backstory episodes? You know, it doesn't have to be these three, but you know, these are my personal picks that I want to talk about. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I really appreciate you and your time watching this video. And thanks for watching again.